September 29th, 2025. Welcome to This Week in Waukesha, the podcast series, episode 2. This is a civic media production produced in partnership with WAUK Radio and in cooperation with Word Brown, using the power of words to change the world. I am your host, Don Brown, and I'm coming to you from the office of former Alderman Don Paul Brown here in our beautiful Banting Park home. And I am joined again by my extraordinary young, talented producer, the mighty Max Martinson. And Max, did I ever tell you where I get the name the mighty Max Martinson from?
I remember you mentioned it once back
It's
when this was a radio show, but I don't
yeah,
remember
it's
exactly where it was
timely.
from.
It's timely because there's a new movie coming out about Bruce Springsteen, and the star from The Bear and from
Yep,
Shameless,
yep.
plays the lead role, and yeah, he looks a lot like him. And um, he used to call his drummer Max Weinberg, who's on Conan O'Brien's show, the mighty Max Weinberg, and I always thought that was a great name. So you're the next generation of mighty Maxes. But hey, yeah, speaking of mighty, we had a really good September of a pod show. Excuse me, pod shows, yeah, podcasts. Can I brand that or patent that pod show? Uh,
We
we
could
had some
try.
great podcast show guests. Because September was National Suicide Prevention Month. We had Curry Pennebaker on. Many of you know he was a candidate for Congress a few years back when Sensenbrenner was still the incumbent, and has been really active in the Democratic Party in Wisconsin, as well as um, the state. Oh yeah, and he's an accomplished building construction, contracting executive. He's been in the roofing business most of his career, and but he's also the victim of he lost his mother to depression 2 years old, and has been very public about that, and has traveled all over the country speaking in favor of promoting good mental health, as well as smart gun control. And so I encourage anyone they haven't heard that to check that podcast out. We learned about the Waukesha County Green Team doing great things to improve the carbon footprint of our local world around us. And then we had a good friend. We reconnected with Kenny Machieski, whose band, the Black and Blue Hearts, has a new song out. And we also got to talk about his involvement as a Waukesha West band dad and other things Waukesha. That was a great interview. And we got to hear, Max got to upload the song onto the podcast, so you can check out that song. And yeah, we also got to talk about Waukesha's great music tradition. And then this first episode for This Week in Waukesha, we had Dawn Lawien and Neal George, who are with Waukesha Resist, which is a grassroots movement. And you can learn more at waukesharesist.org. Um, you're standing up for workers' rights and the rule of law, especially in America, where our way of life, our democracy, our small d democracy, continues to be under threat by the highest levels of government. And it's a pretty frightening time. And so we're grateful that there's people like Dawn and Neal out there fighting the good fight in a nonpartisan, nonviolent way. And look forward to hearing more great things about them. And especially in that episode we talked about kind of a little straw poll I want to conduct with young people and people my age, that how many have ever heard of the band U2 or the Rolling Stones, or like other great bands of the latter part of the 20th century, rock and roll. Um, and then how many people have heard of had heard of Charlie Kirk before his assassination just a few weeks back now. And I confess I really didn't know that much about him. I think I remember reading about him years ago, or about the role he had played in the last election, but he wasn't front and center in the media that I choose to look at. And I try to look at as many unbiased sources that I can, as well as some bias. Um, but of course, this guy had a huge following, and I think it's like we're all going down different rabbit holes to find information, and I think this is how disinformation wins. How people are drinking the Kool-Aid, fed by fear and hatred, which is the easiest way to appeal to people's emotions. and it's a pretty sad time. And was really troubled recently. Speaking of Charlie Kirk, about Cardinal Timothy Dolan, the former Archbishop of the Milwaukee Catholic Archdiocese, who got a big promotion a few years back up at the Big Apple and became a cardinal, and all the things, and had really had always a very strong reputation throughout churchgoers and I think other Christians. And he had made this tribute, this posthumous tribute to Charlie Kirk, and compared him to a modern day St. Paul, which is very upsetting to a lot of people, myself included, because the only thing you can compare tragically is that they were both tragically killed. You could even say decapitated. I mean, St. Paul was, I believe, that was either St. Paul or St. Luke, but um, beyond that, there's really no other comparison. I think you could say that St. Paul, yes, in his earlier life, was very adamant about um, stopping, and even because he was very adamantly believed very strongly in his Jewish faith, and he was part of that brethren. And of course, there's the big transformation, being blinded on the road to Damascus, and then suddenly became one of the most ardent followers of. And what really made St. Paul special, and St. Luke, was that they were really big on spreading the word of the gospel, the word of Christ, to non-Jewish people, to basically pagans and other people of other faiths throughout the world, and and really amazing work in that mission work. I mean, St. Luke is considered one of the doctors of the church because he learned several languages so that he could translate the Bible, or the teachings of Christ, so that other people could learn it. And so many great stories from that tradition of St. Paul and St. Luke. And again, I just I don't see any parallels with Charlie Kirk, because he had always been very much about spreading fear and anger. Like, he made this one comment about he cringes when he sees black pilots, because he figured that they were DEI hires, or they were affirmative action hires, and that they really weren't didn't have the skill sets. And I'm like, and this is why history is so important. It's like, am I still with you, Max?
Yep.
Cool. I saw the thing spinning. But the role that the Tuskegee Airmen played in winning the European theater in World War II played a huge role. And obviously, very talented, very skilled aviators. And I remember there was that fear of trusting black pilots to pilot a multi-million-dollar airplane. And the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, did this huge publicity campaign where she got on a plane with the Tuskegee Airmen and flew in the air for half an hour to show that, yeah, the First Lady can trust flying. Like, why? And so we thought we put that issue to rest, back in World War II. But no, Charlie Kirk decided to resurrect it. And it also upsets me now because, DEI is like, it's now like a four-letter word, even though it's a three-letter acronym. You don't see it not even on government grants or RFPs. Like, you get in trouble if you start putting in demographics or DEI benefits. And there's a huge difference between DEI and affirmative action. Affirmative action was very much about counting belly buttons, and that was one of the kind of the shortcomings of what was intended to be a good idea for better equity in the workplace and better diversity. Whereas DEI is more about the culture in the workplace environment, and so there's not as much of an emphasis on counting belly buttons, but on creating a culture, a place where people feel safe and confident to be the best version of themselves and to express themselves. And a company like Northwestern Mutual, which was extremely profitable, were one of the huge cheerleaders for DEI, for many years. And even they have kind of like, they've taken all that DEI stuff off the internet, and they really toned it down. But you still, there you go. Companies that have these strong cultures of inclusion um, have what is it? they have higher. They're 65% more likely to meet or exceed sales goals. They're 70 to 80% more innovative. They have much lower numbers of sick days, of insurance claims related to illness. There's just so many more positives, and it's because people again get excited to come to work. And many of us from diverse backgrounds, or um, I've even been a guy, I've been like the only maybe guy in a workplace situation. Like there is a certain amount of discomfort that you feel, or maybe even a lack of confidence. But for people of color or people of certain, like sexual orientations, or they have disabilities or mental health issues, it goes on, like going to work is not an easy thing. It's not a very, for a long time. But in these environments that invested in inclusion, um, people get excited about going to work and doing a great job and helping the company grow. And so it's as much of a business strategy as it is a kumbaya, equal rights, workplace diversity thing. It is a smart business strategy. And tragically, like we can't talk about it anymore. It's now been like erased from the general conversation. And I was even surprised working on government grants lately that people from the agencies I'm working with say, well, you can delete all that now. They don't want to see that. It'll probably hurt your application if you're talking about the DEI benefits, or if you're talking about the diversity of the people that you're serving. Like we can't go there anymore. So okay, whatever. But yeah, speaking of government too, is we may be facing a government shutdown again. And unfortunately, that's become a very common thing over the last 20 or 30 years. I don't know what the prognosis is, but it has a big impact on the state of Wisconsin, because I believe there's like $30 billion in discretionary spending earmarked for Wisconsin. And a lot of that's going towards infrastructure, towards building, towards improving our roads and our bridges, and um, things that put people to work and contribute to a circular economy, and contribute to growth and attract people to wanting to come to Wisconsin and live here and work here. And all that hangs in the balance, in addition to the basic services that many of us rely on, if it's Social Security Administration or some of the other social service programs, um, or whatever else we need from the federal government. Like that, for the average person, a lot of things hang in the balance. So I encourage everybody to pay more attention. I'm kind of down on myself for not having more, or not paying more attention to it. But I do know from like a month ago, talking to a somebody in the know in Washington D.C., that there was a majority of Republicans that were very much in favor of getting this budget through and getting some money back to the states where they come from, because they've got a midterm election coming up next year, and they need to show traction. They need to show job growth. They need to show government money going towards productive things, again, like infrastructure, which we always need, especially when there's opportunities or needs for improvement. I know a lot of us are cursing about how long it's taking for 164 for that work being done there. But I was just, driving to that war zone the other night with my wife, and we agreed when this thing's finished, it's going to be 164 is going to be a great thoroughfare, because there's going to be more lanes on both sides. It's going to really be able to accommodate a lot of the growing traffic we've seen through there in recent years. And I don't know if growing's the right word. It's always crowded there on 164, and so this will have a major benefit. And so to have more projects like that throughout southeast Wisconsin and throughout the state, and here in a busy town like Waukesha, those are all good things. So fingers crossed that we do have that the government doesn't shut down after tomorrow. So, but it's another question too. Is, and Max, this is one I got for you as well, being of the younger generation. Do local politics reflect national politics? Like here, I know you don't come to Waukesha as much, but like here in the Milwaukee area, or in your experience.
I mean, I work for the city of Wauwatosa as a
Rosa.
one of their AV techs, so I'm pretty consistently involved with their city council meetings. I don't think that a lot of the same issues are brought up in those types of meetings. Obviously it's stuff that's more related to, here's like a traffic sign or whatever, like a no parking zone on some random street way off in the suburbs.
Yeah.
But I think the principles are there, in the way that I guess hasn't really been reflected in national government, where
Yeah.
people are more working towards a compromise in local
Yeah.
government. And a lot of
Yeah.
times you see in Congress, it's a lot more divided right now. People are fighting for what they want rather than trying to make a system
Well,
that works for everybody involved.
and I'm glad you mentioned that because that's where I didn't finish my point about my insider information from my Washington insider, and he mentioned about a majority of Republicans that want the government to move forward, get this budget passed so that they can trickle some dollars back to their states and get some economic development going. But there is a minority of Republicans, and I would imagine they're influential. They want to stick with what's called the continuing resolution, where they want to cut government to the bone. They want to cut spending, and what everybody's not realizing is like that's our money, that's our tax dollars that should be coming back to us to be repurposed for things that matter, things that can make a difference. And a lot of the arguments on the right is, oh yeah, you're there's going to be this big tax break that none of us are going to get, but it's going to be taxes, it's going to be a rip off for the rich. They're going to get their tax breaks, but that money's not going to come back to us. It's going to go back to them. And that's the tragedy. And that's why, even Republicans I know are really upset with the state legislature in Madison that's Republican, because we've been sitting on a surplus for a long time. And yeah, that's a great thing, but not if we're having problems with roads here in Waukesha County, in the Milwaukee area. Not if Waukesha County has to create a sales tax because they're not getting the money they deserve back from the state. And Waukesha County is one of the more affluent counties in the state, so I'm sure we pay a nice chunk of that. And the fact that that's not recirculating back, especially when you have a Republican-run legislature in a very Republican county, um, that's upsetting, or it just makes sense at all. And so, like I said, it'll be interesting. There's gonna be some late nights tonight and tomorrow night to see what happens with this budget. I hope that if what they say is true, that the Republican majority has their way, and then we can pass a budget that's going to see some of that those earmarks, those CDS funds coming back to the states where they can do a lot of good and meet a lot of needs that we have. In some cases, very desperate. In other cases, um, needs are creating good jobs, especially in the building trades. So, um, but I'm glad you talked about your experience with the city of Tosa, with the city council, Max, because it's one thing I miss about being an alderman is that an overwhelming majority of the issues you discussed were of a very nonpartisan nature. Like they don't care who handles our garbage collection, Republicans or Democrats, as long as it gets done right. And same thing, that we've got good police, we've got safe neighborhoods, we've got opportunities for economic growth. Those are the things that are important to everybody at the local level, things we can all agree on. So I know we have our issues with the school. A lot of school boards have become more polarized in recent years, but I'm of the belief that that could come around when people realize at a local level that we should be as open-minded in our school boards in our schools as we are with our city governments, with a big focus on local issues and things that matter perhaps the most to us because we live here every day. So you talk about, I was listening to the radio, I forgot whose show it was. It might have been Todd Elbaz, where they're talking about a great way to get people on the same page where we can enjoy each other's company and still differ politically, but be civil is how about those Milwaukee Brewers? I mean, home field advantage in the playoffs, like what an exciting time. And it's been a great couple years for the Brewers.
Just got to
So
do a piece with them this past Friday.
did you? Yeah. How
Yeah,
great is
so
that?
stay tuned to Civic Media's social media pages.
I love it. And keep a clip of that like 50 years from now. Like you're gonna, especially if they go all the way. Like that's great stuff. And That's how we can come together. And same thing, it's like get more involved in local government and see how we can learn there's so much more that unites us, or there are things that unite us are much more important than the agendas of fear and hatred and misinformation. So I want to thank all of you for joining me here on this podcast. And if you got a story to tell, message me on my Facebook page or through civic media. We'd love to hear your story, especially if it's about our beloved Waukesha. I want to thank again my producer, the mighty Max Martinson, for all the great work he does. Scary Halloween season, please remember safety is everybody's responsibility. Good mental health is everybody's right. Goramila Mahagav Galer, and see ya!